Good afternoon. I am Lauren Jane Heller. I am the Director of Communications for Real Ventures, which is Canada's most active venture capital firm. And when I first came up with the idea for this talk, I was planning on talking to everybody about what has happened, what I've done to go from somebody who was basically a broke freelancer doing journalism and web design to the director of communications at a venture capital firm in Canada. I didn't even know what VC was about a year ago. And then I realized that after I submitted the name for my talk, that everything about the title is actually nonsense. First off, I didn't really choose this adventure. I feel like in a big way, the adventure chose me. I often think that there's a lot of times in life where you're going and you get to a crossroads or you get to a place and you have absolutely no idea what to do or which road to take. And for me, a lot of that came down to just being open and taking the opportunity, and here I am a few years later, completely in a different place. The second reason why I feel like the title is nonsense is the idea that I transformed one unexpected opportunity into the career of my dreams. Because the opportunity, which was actually a Facebook message from a high school friend asking me to, if I could find a venue and free beer for an event that was taking place 2 weeks later, to which I said, sure, I can get a free venue and beer, no problem. And I got the venue and the beer, and he came into town and helped me run the first event, and I was the lead organizer for HackerNest Tech Socials, which take place every month, and suddenly I was part of the tech community in Montreal. So when it comes down to it, that unexpected opportunity wasn't something that I would say I transformed into the career of my dreams, more that it transformed me and the direction I was going in my life, and I had no idea that that was something that was going to happen at all. And then the third reason why my title is nonsense is the concept of the career of my dreams, because I'm sure that many of you would agree that you don't have any idea what you want to do with your lives. I didn't know what the career of my dreams was. Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pop star or a ballerina. But when it's come down to it, first off, I wouldn't call what I have a career in a typical sense, because if you look at all the experiences that I've had, it looks more like a portfolio. I've done I started working in documentary film. I went to doing web design. I did new media before it was just called media. I've done a whole bunch of different things that have led to the place where I could become the director of communications for a firm, but it wasn't a career trajectory in your sense of, for instance, my mother, who is a teacher, who went to teachers college and then got a job and has taught for the last 40 years of her life. And I think that probably most of the people in this room didn't go to school or go to university and get a degree that would have a logical next step. Some might have, but I think that there are so many jobs out there now that didn't even exist a year ago, never mind when we were growing up, that the concept of having a career of your dreams is something that's I just don't think it's a good thing to go into in your life thinking, I need to get to this place. Oh, that career is going to be the one for me. So despite all of these things, I am still going to talk about how I transformed an opportunity into what is a fantastic career. I work with really amazing people. I have a lot of flexibility. I can do things that I never imagined I was going to be able to do. And when it comes down to it, there are 6 main things that I want to talk about. Oh, and the other thing is I still wake up all the time thinking, how did I get here? Because it still doesn't really make sense. the first thing that I have to say to anyone in this room, and I think that given that we're all at a tech conference, there's a chance that you're already doing this, is put yourself out there, go to events, go to networking events. I know the word networking is awful, and that going into a room full of people you've never met before can be like torture, but what I learned by doing it over and over again, so in that first opportunity where I became the lead organizer for HackerNest, I was so good at getting free venues and free beer that the founder of the organization asked me if I would lead their sponsorship efforts. So what that meant was me going into rooms full of people I'd never met before, trying to get them to give us money for hackathons and other events that at that time people had no idea what they were. And sometimes going into those rooms was the most terrifying thing in the world, especially if it was a room full of people in suits. And then I realized after doing this a bunch of times that everyone is terrified of talking to strangers. Nobody wants to be the first person to talk. So if you are the first person to talk, other people feel like you're saving them, and they don't have to go out and find somebody else who will talk to them. So whether you go up to them and talk business with them, I'd say that the best thing is actually just to go and introduce yourself to people and maybe make an awkward joke, and maybe they'll laugh at you, maybe they won't. Or comment on the fact that you don't know anybody there, or you have no idea why you're there or what you're doing, and then listen to what they have to say. And one of those things that I've found by going to a lot of those events, by having to get used to asking people for money, is that it's surprising how easy it is and how fruitful it is to ask people for help. If you want to change your career, if you want to get a promotion, if you want to get a better job, if you want to pivot into a different area of the industry, all you need to do is ask people for help. I love helping people. I know most people also love helping people. It makes you feel good when somebody you know from your advice has improved their life or done something exciting or different. So when it comes down to it, going around these events, putting yourself out there, and if you need something, asking people can be amazingly fruitful. And you don't even need to ask people for help for yourself. Sometimes asking for help for other people can also help you to learn things. Something that I've learned as a journalist, which sort of relates to these first two parts, is that when you're going out there and you're talking to people, when you're at events, you're meeting people, listen to them. Because a lot of the time when we go into a conversation, we hear something that somebody says, and then we start thinking about the answer we're going to give. Instead of actually listening to what they have to say to you, you spend half of the time formulating this really smart response, but by the time it's your turn to speak, it's sort of irrelevant, and you've missed everything that they were saying to you. The value that you get from actually listening and taking time and not responding immediately is something that can be really amazing. One of the lessons I learned as a journalist was awkward pauses are your best friend, because when you don't immediately jump in after somebody stops speaking, they'll often say something much more revealing or much more interesting than what they said in their standard response. So take that extra moment to not say anything. You can nod, you should smile, show them that you're engaging with them, but don't talk. And then suddenly these really interesting insights might come out of those people. So you're putting yourself out there, you're asking people for help, you're listening to what they have to say, and opportunities, hopefully, and in most cases very likely, will start to present themselves. So once these opportunities come to you, one of the hardest things that you have to do or get used to, which was really hard for me, is that often you're going to fail, and you're going to fail miserably, and it's not necessarily going to be about you. Sometimes you'll walk into an opportunity, for instance, me being the sponsorship lead for HackerNest. it was fantastic. I learned so much. I put myself out there. Sometimes I raised no money. Sometimes I raised a bunch of money and I felt awesome. Other days I felt like I was so terrible at my job and I couldn't believe that they still wanted me to work with them. I ended up, at the same time that I was working there, I was still working building websites for the Faculty of Dentistry at McGill, just to show how random my jobs are. Were all over the place. And I decided I was going to quit that job and focus solely on HackerNest. And I very quickly discovered that doing full-time sales for me was the most depressing thing in the entire world. Because you have to have such thick skin to have people say no to you every day. And so I realized that me not wanting to do that job was just one of those things, and that even though I could have pushed through and maybe got better at it, maybe it was time for me to choose to do something else. Connected with that is the idea of being open to change for yourself. I think that many of us from our childhoods get these ideas of who we want to be, whether it's people external to us or ourselves. It's like, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to be so great at it and I'm going to help all of these people. And then you get to university and you realize that you really hate studying, doing calculus or doing some of your classes, and that what you'd really rather do is a degree in philosophy. And for a lot of people, I think that's really hard. And you can get even further into your career and into your life and still have those moments where it's like, but I was going to do this thing and it was going to be so great. And then you realize that you're actually miserable. I think that that's probably one of the biggest problems that we have as a society, but I think women often will stay in things that they don't necessarily like because they have been told that they need to keep quiet and not shake the boat, and that you should feel lucky that you have this job. And it's something that a lot of us will go through, and something that I've learned from having lots of different jobs in a lot of different contexts, and also freelancing and doing contracts and being fired a bunch of times, that it actually, those ideas of what you can and can't do are externally imposed, or they're ideas that you had, but kind of that idea of, if somebody offered you $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with your life? That's something that you can think about when you're having those miserable moments in your job where you're like, you know what, maybe I don't need to feel so bad about the fact that I don't like what I'm doing, because I can change it. Another part of that change, and this is something that I have to admit that I struggle with still and have struggled with my entire life, is not feeling like there's something wrong with me when I can't do something as well as I want to. Giving myself permission to be bad at things. I have 2 young daughters, and I'm constantly telling them that it's okay to be bad at something, it's okay to mess up, but I don't give myself that same liberty to screw things up, to put myself out there and feel like I'm totally failing at something. So it's a constant process where I have to remind myself that, you know what, it's not the end of the world if something doesn't work out the way I want to. What other people think of me is not important, because as long as I'm okay with what I'm doing, that's way more important. It's still something that I think everybody is going to have a hard time with throughout our lives, because we want people to like us, and we want to be good or do well, and that's absolutely not something that many of us really know how to do. So just to go through a few more of the sort of ideas and trajectories of what's happened and how I got to this place in my career, is that with all of these different piece is, so putting yourself out there, you're often going to meet people. There's a ton of different ways that you can meet them. You can meet them at these events. Sometimes you can meet people online, but when it comes down to it for jobs, if you're applying for jobs, most of the time it's through referrals. You're not as likely to get a job that you're applying to on Indeed or on LinkedIn as you are to get a job through somebody you know. I'm hiring people at the moment, and it's the same thing. If I've already met somebody, or if I know somebody, if I've had somebody introduced to me, I'm more likely to trust that that person is part of the community, will know what they're doing, or you just have to write a really amazing cover letter and show me that you can actually follow all of the instructions, like sending in a cover letter and including your name or including the file in the cover letter. And then making sure that you're actually doing what you want to be doing, because that's something that shows a lot that I've seen for myself. As I said, I didn't know what venture capital was a few years ago, so the fact that I'm the director of communications at a venture capital firm was a huge surprise to me. And I'll go back to the title of the talk, that I may not have the career of my dreams right now, but I feel like I'm so much closer to it than I was 3 years ago when I was struggling. And sometimes you have to take those steps and feel like you have no idea where you are or how you got to where you are in order to get to the right place. Just to tell you the two stories of getting fired, because I think that's something that a lot of us are terrified of. The first time I got fired, I was working as the office manager for a boutique marketing company. And when I was called in by the managing director to talk to me, what he said to me was, "You're a creative, you're not an administrator." And deep down, I knew that. I knew that all I really wanted to do was write and create things. But the idea that somebody else saw that I wasn't very good at running an office made me want to die. And then I got a phone call from somebody at the same firm like a week after I stopped working there, asking me if I wanted to do freelance content writing for them. And it was like, awesome, so you're going to pay me severance and you're going to pay me to do this freelance gig? That's amazing. And so that moment of getting fired, that wasn't about me being a bad person or me sucking. It was about me not being in the right place. It was about me having taken an opportunity that absolutely wasn't right for me, and somebody else had to recognize it for me. The second time I got fired, it was actually a similar situation where this time I was working as a writer. I was working with a startup. It was a fantastic team. I really like everybody. I'm still friends with a lot of people on the team, but it just was not the right fit. And I couldn't write in the voice that the company wanted me to write in, and the company didn't want to change that voice. And so it wasn't going to work out. And the fact that I could accept that and I could see that that actually wasn't a big deal, because it wasn't saying that I'm a bad writer. It was saying that I couldn't do this one particular thing that needed to be done, and that there probably is only one person in the entire world who can do it, who was the guy who was doing it before me and is now still doing it again. And that's just something that you have to accept in life, is you're not always going to be able to do all of the things that you want to. And that's totally okay. And if it comes down to it, if I got $10 million tomorrow, I would quit my job and write science fiction. But I'm actually in a place now where I feel like I'm so much closer to the dreams of doing whatever I want to do with my life, and I get to interview really interesting people and write about them. So I think it's all about these choices. It's about being open to change. It's about being kind to yourself when you do screw up, because you are going to screw up a lot. And like we tell our kids, and like I said, like I tell my daughters all the time, failure is okay. It's really important to be terrible at things, because if you only do the things that you're good at, you're never going to learn, and you're never going to realize that, you know what, maybe you can't do it now, but the more you try, the better you're going to get at it, and the more rewarding it's going to be. So, thank you for listening to me.
Any questions?
So I had this question that is turning my mind because I'm in a change of fields right now. And I wonder if the fact that sometimes we're so lost is because we lack, I forgot the word in English, encadrement, I don't know what it framing, from an knowledge about what is available to us. For example, when I was growing up, I never thought of going into tech. Nobody told me I could go into tech. I just saw the computer there to go into Wikipedia, and that was it. So how much of it is also like a society responsibility to make the information available for all the young women that come in behind us to know that this is a path that we can take?
I think that you're exactly right, that there isn't enough information out there about the types of jobs that we can have. I had no idea. I studied English at university, and I had no idea that after my English degree, I could apply for a job at a tech firm. Because in my mind, it was like, well, I have an English degree. And people do this to us, too. I had an English degree, and people would be like, oh, are you going to be a teacher? And I was just like, why do I have to be a teacher? There are so many more opportunities, and I think that there's more information coming out now about what you can do with different degrees, what different jobs exist. But I think another problem is that there isn't enough information at all anywhere about what jobs do exist. For girls and women generally, we are not necessarily being told that there are really awesome careers in tech. Now, and my daughters are 9 and 5, there is a lot more emphasis on getting girls into STEM, on showing them that coding is really fun. So I think that there is a shift happening, but I think that for those of us who are a bit older, unfortunately, we missed out. And whether it's people like me who come from sort of a background in the humanities, or people who are more into math and science and we're already doing that, it's showing people that there are a lot more opportunities now and that you can change jobs. And I think for a lot of women, we also don't apply for jobs we don't feel that we're qualified for, where I've now learned, as a result of going to tons of events and talking to tons of people, men apply for jobs, and actually getting CVs, men apply for jobs they are completely unqualified for all the time. And so if there's something you're interested in doing, just put yourself out there and try to do it, and see if you can get information interviews with people, see if you can find somebody who works in that field, and you never know what could happen.